Okay, due to popular request, in this video I'll be discussing why I'm not a Christian. I get this message at least once a day asking why I'm not a Christian or claiming that I'm going to go to hell for worshiping demons. Because yes, I am a Nordic pagan. And I'm going to be honorable about this. I'm not going to be vitriolic. I'm not going to be demeaning. I'm not going to state the old, tired, hashed out arguments that are typical of people on my side of the aisle. I won't be going into Jesus's heritage. I won't be saying that Christians were a proto SJW movement, which I actually disagree with. I don't think all Christianity is equal either. I think that the early Christians from the Levant are very different from the Knights of Chivalry, from the Grail Knights, from the Arthurian Knights, and that those people are very different from modern liberal Protestant Christians. So I'm going to try to be as nuanced as possible when it comes to this topic. Now, I know it's hard to discuss these things because people have faith, and I, as an actual true believer in the Nordic gods, I'm not an archetype bro. I'm not it's just a representation. And that's fine if people are like that too. You know, everybody has their own interpretations, and these types of discussions and interpretations have been going on since people started worshiping deities. So I'm not going to say that they're fake. I just have my own personal brand. I'm not part of any organization. I am a lone practitioner. And so I will just be discussing from my own point of view. I don't speak for everybody who claims to be a Nordic pagan. But the reason why I would label myself as such is because my patron deity is Odin and all the other deities that are associated with Nordic paganism I also venerate. That's what I say. If that's what you do, I would just call you a Nordic pagan or a heathen or whatever you want to say. I don't really care. I don't get too upset about the terms involved here. People just, get really bogged down in that as well. But that's what I believe. That's, it is a recognized faith, at least in my country. Okay, if you sign up for the military, you can check off that box. So people say it's a fake religion. It is absolutely not a fake religion. It is recognized by the state, and it is in many countries around the world. And there's, a lot of people who practice this. But I don't see Christians as my enemy. I have many friends who are Christian. I have many followers and subscribers who are Christian. I understand that their faith is important to them, but it does get old after a while hearing that I'm going to hell, that I worship demons. So I'm just gonna, lay out what I believe and have my case. I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm just here. I'm just stating my belief. Okay, so number one, why I'm not Christian is forgiveness. I don't believe in forgiveness. I believe in grudges. I believe in having the book of grudges. If you haven't seen that video of mine, I really truly believe that grudge holding is superior to forgiveness. Now, obviously not over petty things and small things, but when it comes to something major in life, I am not going to forgive you. I'm not going to let it go. And I like the old Nordic Germanic way of either you get vengeance or they have to pay you back in some way. And that's the only way you can square the circle, the Guild or whatever, the home gang, the battling, the dueling. Something has to be done in order to make it right. I don't just believe in words making it right or feelings making it right. So that's something that for me, this, Christ commanding people to forgive as God forgives, I don't agree with that on a fundamental level. And so that is one reason why I can't become Christian, because that will never change. And I can't constantly battle myself and battle my own being in order to strive for living up to the ideals of a certain religion. That's why I like being a Nordic pagan, because it just fits my template of being. It's a 1-to-1 ratio of my template of being, and there's no, it's very congruent to me. There's no mental gymnastics I have to get over. That's why I like being a Nordic pagan. Another reason would be original sin. I don't believe you're born guilty. I don't believe you're born inferior. I don't believe you're born a sinner. I believe that you become dishonorable over time by committing dishonorable acts. You're not just automatically a terrible person or defective or a sinner. I actually think it's kind of abhorrent that we see this, or the Christians see this about ourselves in our culture at the large, because we live in a very guilt-ridden culture currently. And I don't agree with that. I think people should have pride in who they are. Again, pride is another thing that is very unchristian, which I think a certain level of pride is a good thing. When it gets to the level of hubris and blind pride, I think that's a problem. But everyone should have a certain healthy level of pride about them. You should be proud about your actions. You should be proud about how you carry yourself. You should be proud about your accomplishments and your talents. I think that's a great thing. And we have certain gifts, and people should take pride in those gifts. And I don't think that's sinful. Eternal damnation. I don't think that hell as eternity is something I can really believe in. It's a little harsh. I think that there are people who are so terrible, so irredeemable, that they don't even get to suffer for eternity, that their souls literally just become void, that the soul suckers, the soul leeches will just take their soul and just absorb it into the void, and they will no longer exist. But to me, making somebody suffer for eternity is a really long time. It's a really long time to make somebody suffer over this, tiny, small blip of reality that we find ourselves in and today. So, yeah, I think there is a punishment system, and there's definitely different types of afterlife in the pagan perspective, but eternal damnation to me is rough. Now, I know I'm going to probably get a lot of things wrong, and depending on your denomination, if you're Christian, you're listening, you're going to say, hey, well, this isn't actually real. It's just, yeah, I understand that. I'm not going to be an expert. Just let me know if I get anything wrong in the comments, and I'll update I'll get the DLC update for my knowledge of Christianity, and you guys can let me know. So let's get into the LARP question. Am I just LARPing as something that's fairy tale, it's make believe? What really is LARP? What makes what I do a LARP, and what a Sikh, for instance, not a LARP? Is it because they have more people doing it? Is it because they have more of an unbroken lineage? Is that what really is the issue at hand? I see Sikhs, they're wearing clothing from a bygone era a lot of the time. Many actual people still do this. You don't call Saudi princes gallivanting around in their robes and their headdresses LARPers. And this is what we are called LARPing. I think a lot of people associate this with dressing up. I personally don't ever dress up. I don't wear any special clothing, and I don't really do any special, things like that. I don't care if people want to do that, but that's the thing about, and I see is kind of the misconception, even among people who would call themselves a Nordic pagan, is that Nordic paganism, or paganism in general, is not about hearkening back to the past. It's not about swords, and it's not about shields, which is cool, by the way. It's something I think is awesome. But they are timeless values. They are timeless morality, and what you believe in can be applicable to a cyberpunk realm. It could be applicable to being in a spacefaring civilization. It could be applicable to the Bronze Age. It could be applicable to the Stone Age. It doesn't matter the timeline that you're in. These are moral systems, not dress up, not make believe, not wanting to be in the Stone Age or in the Bronze Age or in the Iron Age. But of course, what we the knowledge that we received and the anecdotes and the moral answers that we got obviously took place in the Bronze and Iron Age. For me specifically, I'm also really into polar traditionalism, so I also see value in the cousin people of the Germanics, the cousin belief systems of the Celts, the Slavs, Finno-Ugrics, Greco-Romans, Scythians, even the Vedics. I see a lot of value in those as well. So LARPing to me is just, it is dress up, but why is it that Pete Hegseth can call us LARPers, but you would never dare to call a Sikh or a Muslim or, a Hindu or any other or any tribal person or any other group on earth. Nobody would call them a LARPer. It's just European paganism where people feel free to criticize, to demean, to disrespect. We're talking about people's actual true belief here. I truly believe. I am a true believer. And I have been for 20 years. And it really isn't going anywhere. I know I talk about a lot of stuff on my channel. And I don't even see Christians as I'm very moderate. And I think have a better understanding of how Christianity came into play than many people on my side of the aisle too. I don't see Christianity as diametrically opposed to everything that I believe in. They are not my sworn enemies. I believe the people who are most against what I believe would be the cult of Ishtar and their devotees of Slanesh. That is the people that I see having the biggest problem in the current framework of the world. I'm pretty ambivalent to Christianity. I just don't think it's optimal for me. And that's what I'm really trying to hammer home here. It's not optimal for my template, for my belief system, for my soul. And Nordic paganism is, of course, people will say, well, these are fallen records, these are lost records, they're corrupt records. I disagree. I think at this point in our time, 2025, we have more knowledge of what pre Christian Europeans believed in than ever before. And in fact, you have more access to understanding what they believed in than any Christian would have had access to understanding their own religion or any other believer for that matter about their own religion and any other time period on earth. So we have more access to information and knowledge on our beliefs than any other people. But you wouldn't call people in the past not true believers because they didn't really know what they were believing. Belief is actually very simple. Believing in something, it shouldn't take a massive tome of knowledge. You should be able to have a couple of chapters and be able to build a religion around that, like the Quran, like the Bible. You don't need to have a massive database. But even now we do have a massive database. So any criticism saying that we don't actually know what they believe, I think is false. And it's just not the case anymore. It may have been the case 200 years ago. Where would you get this information? You would have to scour, but now it's all compiled together. We know what they believed. Okay. The concept of loving thy neighbor. I don't really care about my neighbor, to be honest. I don't think I have to love my neighbor. What if your neighbor is a douchebag? What if your neighbor is rude? What if your neighbor is trying to invade you? This whole loving your enemy thing, too. I'm not going to love my enemy. I don't feel love towards everybody. I think universal love, and again, maybe this isn't applicable to every brand of Christianity, but from my experience, from the modern Anglo Protestant angle, which is the framework that I'm most used to, and which is the framework that many of us come out of. Though myself, I was not raised Christian, and I know a lot of people on my side of the aisle were raised Christian and they have a lot of hang-ups when it comes to Christianity because they probably had some sort of issues or abuse, and there's a lot of stories out there I've heard from. So I don't have this like I hate you, mom and dad Christian resentment that a lot of people do, but I gotta get myself in trouble with everybody here today. Okay, but that's okay. Um, yeah, I don't love my neighbors. I don't love my enemy. I just it cheapens love when you have to love everybody in my perspective. I love my kin. I love people who are res- you know deserving of my love. I don't think you should just hand out love to everybody's corner. I'm not really about that. Okay, another thing I don't like is this priest thing, popery, priestly hierarchy. I don't think, and this is more Catholicism, this is more Orthodoxy. Again, the I know I've talked a lot about how I don't like Protestantism in the past. I don't. I really don't. I don't like specifically Calvinism because I think that this whole you have to make money and you have to be successful to go to heaven, and poor people go to hell. What if somebody's poor but they've done some epic quests in their life? Do you think they really and they've had hardship and they've had lots of lots of things to overcome and they haven't had the best economic reflection of their interpersonal life? For a Calvinist, all the hardships and all the poverty and all the suffering of that person would be a reflection of their soul being doomed to hell. And I think that is abhorrent. I did not somebody who can ever entertain that thought. As for popery and Romanism, I'm not a big fan of that either. I don't like the idea of a priest telling me what to do. I don't like the idea of a priest saying they have a deeper connection with God because they've been celibate their whole lives and they've gone to these communes and they've they're somehow purer than the profane. I don't know what these priests are doing in their life. I don't know what they've been up to. I don't know who they are. They just say they're good people and we just have to take it at their word. I don't know what they do. So why should I believe them? I don't like the idea of kissing people's hands either. I don't like the idea of kissing another mortal's hand or believing another mortal is spiritually more elevated than I am. I'm not a big fan of that. So Protestantism, popery, Roman popery, and Orthodoxy, to me, it's not something that I can get on board with because I just don't like the hierarchy of the priestdom. I am more Ghibelline. I am not a Guelph. I believe in the Holy Roman Emperor's final authority, not the Pope. And we'll get into some of this because I think the Treaty of Westphalia should be. We need to get like a little bit of a grace here, a little bit of extension. We need to get our little names here written into the contract as pagans because the Treaty of Westphalia I think was a good thing, saying that okay, Catholics and Protestants have and should have rights in majority of the opposite religions borders. So if you're a Catholic and a Protestant, you should be allowed to be a Catholic. You don't have to, try to take over the country and make it Catholic, but you should be able to practice. And same with Protestants and Catholics. I think the same olive branch should be extended at this point to the pagans because we have grown. I was around 20 years ago scouring forums and finding obscure YouTube videos. It was very, very niche. It was very small. It was something that, you know, wasn't very popular at the time. And it has since grown exponentially. Now, I don't think that Nordic paganism or paganism in general will become a dominant force. I think it'll continue to grow. Yes. I think it'll become a bigger faction. I think it'll keep gaining followers, and people will find it and find resonance with it. I don't think it'll ever be a dominant religion, but it will be a recognizable, and has, I think, become a recognizable faction on both the right and the left. Now, obviously, right wing pagans are going to have a lot more in common with right wing Christians than they're going to have in common with left wing pagans. And left wing pagans are going to have a lot more in common with left wing Christians. If there's, I mean, there are left wing Christians. Just look at the Anglican Church. So I think that the Treaty of Westphalia, we need to get written in there as well. And I don't think the orientating force of a society should necessarily have to be religion or should be religion. I think the orientating force of society is the Quasar Haderach, the imperial god emperor. That's where I think authority should be derived from, not necessarily a religion. That's why I don't even like the term Christian nationalism and stuff like that. I think you can't really orientate Caesar's realm with Christ's law. And most Western countries have moved far past that, and they won't be coming back to that level anymore. So I think, yeah, it's like the bickering, the infighting. I understand it because people are passionate. People are very passionate about what they believe in. But it's this inclination, it's this desire to orientate an entire society around religion, which I think is a deeply personal path. And for Germany, for instance, was split across Protestant and Catholic lines and managed to function. I think that freedom of religion is fundamentally a good thing, fundamentally a pillar of Western belief. And really, all I'm asking is my freedom of religion and to be left alone to practice what I believe. I'm not trying to convert. Some people have said that they are more interested in this realm because of what I've posted and what I've talked about, which I think maybe it wasn't me who converted them, but they were going to anyway, but I just gave them that doorway. And if it wasn't me, somebody else probably would have anyway. I'm not saying I'm the authority. There's plenty of guys who have way more encyclopedic knowledge of Nordic belief than I do, but I have never really been, someone to pretend like I'm not what I am. So that's the main crux of the issue I see here, is that there's a lot of vitriol, there's a lot of hate. And what I think about Christianity, I don't think of it as a monolith. And I think Christianity has been alchemically transformed by Hyperborea into what it was at its peak. At its peak, Christianity was Grail Christianity, was chivalric Christianity. That was it at its peak. That was it at its most Hyperborean. And ever since then, it's been on a decline. So I don't like these straw mans about Christianity either, that Christianity is inherently weak. It's inherently feminine. It's inherently going to create SJW society, because it's clearly historically not the case. You have the Spanish Empire, you have the Italian Empire, you have the British Empire, the Russian Empire, you have imperium within Christianity. So to think that's not Christianity is somehow toothless, I think is a straw man. I think it's a fallacy. So we have to take it at its most capable form in order to properly weigh it, if you're weighing it in terms of it embodying a heroic ideal. And so to me, that pinnacle was chivalry. And I think chivalry comes from the older Hyperborean ethos that was grafted on to Christianity. So early Christianity was much different from knightly Christianity. It was more Dionysian, it was more Near Eastern, it was completely different, and to its diamond form of what it would be that created Gothic cathedrals and whatnot, and knightly orders. So to say I don't like straw manning things I'm trying to criticize here. So, but then it became, with the times as well, it's diminished. It became more universal. It became more passive. The pacifist, forgiving nature of Christianity reemerged, and eventually we get what we have today, which is the modern take of Christianity. And but that's cyclical, and I believe in cycles. I believe in the cyclical nature of time, which is very pagan, which is very traditional. And I don't believe in linear time. And so Christianity also has this linear timeline, which I'm not really in line with either, because there is a beginning, middle, and end, and the end is the end times. Whereas the more pagan cyclical nature is that everything will continue to unfold in cycles. And so even Ragnarok is different from the apocalypse in that after Ragnarok, the cycle continues again. Men survive and repopulate the planet. Gods survive and repopulate Asgard. And so again, the whole cycle unfolds, and you have another Satya Yuga, another golden age. Whereas heaven, to me, and we're going to get more metaphysical here. To me, I don't understand heaven. And every Christian I listen to about heaven, it's always a different iteration. So I've had Christians tell me that if you're a good Christian, when you go to heaven, you get a castle, and if you're a bad Christian, when you go to heaven, you get a teepee. I don't understand that at all. And you live in a castle or teepee for forever. At least the Nordics have different types of heaven. You have Valhalla for the more warrior-oriented people. You have Elfheim for people who are seeking a more elvenly existence. You want to rest. You want to go to Rivendell. You have different various types of punishment. You also have reincarnation. It's very varied, and it's not eternal. Things will change even in those realms as well. So I'm not really. I don't understand it. Eternal damnation, eternal heaven. These are very long times to be reaping the fruits of our earthly existence. And to me, it seems like it's not really fair. It's not really a fair setup. And then that gets us into the problem of evil. That's in the pagan perspective. Now, this is going to be kind of confusing maybe for some people. It's kind of paradoxical as well. But the gods are not omni powerful. They have limitations. That's why I see in Christianity, and the problem of evil is that if Jehovah is the all powerful God of eternity, he allows all this evil to unfold. Even though, again, there's going to be Christians who correct me. This is just how I see it. They say there's the problem of free choice and whatnot. Okay, I just see it like this. Ultimately, he allows everything to happen if he is omnipowerful, if he's omnipresent, and if he's omniscient. And so, how I see the pagan have a better way of dealing with the problem of evil is that there's also evil forces out there who are just as powerful as the gods. And then it's more of a chaos Kampf, a cosmic struggle, a cosmic battle between these two forces, Ahura Mazda and whatnot in Zoroastrianism, which is more of a distilled version of that, where instead of pantheons of gods battling it out, you have one ultimate good god and one ultimate evil god. So That's why fundamentally I am a polytheist. That's what paganism fundamentally I think is the belief in multiple powers, polytheism. Now there's other people who believe in deism and other iterations of that, but for myself, fundamentally I am a polytheist. I believe in multiple cosmic forces at hand, multiple factions, not even one or two. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. As you can see, I have a lot of thoughts on the matter. I've been thinking about these things for a very long time. And so I hope I'm giving something that's different from the typical angle. And again, you have people attacking Christianity who are posing as being on our side of the aisle, but they're not. They actually are atheists and they just have Nordic pagan aesthetics. And then when they're pressed, they say, well, I'm actually agnostic, which I don't understand. You should just be, attacking it from an agnostic perspective. I don't know why you have to throw in the pagans into this mix. And some people say, well, people are just Nordic pagans for political purposes. That's not the case at all for me. I discovered this way before everything became super political. In about 2009 or 10 was when I was really getting into it first. So, and maybe that is, I think, yeah, definitely that is the case for most people, for not most people, but for some people, definitely that's not lost on me either. There are people who just don't like Christianity. They want to be something. And so since Satanism is now out of vogue and LaVeyan Satanism is no longer really relevant, well, what's the other thing I can be? Well, I can be a Nordic pagan. That's definitely out there for sure. I've seen those people around. And yeah, they are annoying. So what else is there? There's the resonance. At fundamentally, I think faith is super rational. I don't think ultimately you're going to be able to rationalize yourself to a faith. Now, some people say you can, but for me, I don't think it's the case. I think it's more of a calling, it's a blood memory, it's intuition. And so I don't resonate fundamentally with Christianity. I don't resonate with the names. I can't relate to somebody named Ezekiel or Moses or David. I can't resonate with those names. But when people are called Thor and Beowulf and Sigrid and Sigurd and Siegfried, that sounds more relatable to me. The set and setting is in the north. It takes place in a northern realm. That's way more applicable to myself as well. I can relate way more to a northern setting. I know this is superficial, and sometimes I am a bit superficial, but again, I think I gave a lot more deeper metaphysical, ethical reasons previously. So now I'm going to be a bit more superficial. Super rationality. So yeah, names and the set in the setting and Ezekiel and Jebediah to me, that doesn't really make me it doesn't resonate at all. It really doesn't. When I see a ginger with a hammer, it's like, yeah, like that's like half the people I know and grew up with. Okay. It's like half the people in my family. So I can relate to that a lot more. The stories as well. One, I remember when I was first reading the Eddas, and one of the stories I knew that my ancestors wrote this. I knew that where I'm from, this is where I'm from, this is where I belong, is a story of Balder when he's invulnerable, and they're all throwing spears and axes at him, and they're having like the best time, and they're all just so jolly and so happy while they have this game where they just get to chuck projectiles at Balder and nothing happens to him because he's impervious. No other story in the Bible ever resonated as much as that to me than that story did. Because it just felt like these are my people. I can relate to this. My ancestors wrote this. This is hilarious. And yeah, I mean, there's just so many stories like that in the Eddas where it's like, like I can relate to this. Like these are my people. this is my brain essentially writing this down. There's a connection there that I think you feel it if you understand it. You feel it at a fundamental level. And I really do really just love those stories. So many of them. Beowulf, when they're walking in with their mail and the shining mail, and they're going through their lineage and all the stories of their past. Another thing I really appreciate, and it's in the Bible too. I really appreciate how everything is set up within lineages, and the buildup of the main story goes back several generations. It does in Beowulf, and it does in the Nibelungans. It's a build up through bloodlines to a main storyline. It's not just, you're not just atomized and this guy just popped out of nowhere and Lilu fell through your cab somehow randomly one day. It's a build up of ancestors and generations that lead to a fruition of this story. So I really like that. And again, that's in the Bible as well. So that's why, there is some overlap for sure. I really like this passage from Revolt Against the Modern World by Evola when he talks about how basically Hyperborean ethics were grafted onto Christianity, and that main fruition manifested itself in Grail Christianity and knightly Christianity. Within nominal Christian worldview, chivalry upheld without any substantial alterations an Aryan ethic in the following manner: upholding the ideal of the hero rather than that of the saint. And so that's what paganism is. The heroes of paganism are heroic. They're not saintly. They're Beowulf, Siegfried, Odin, Thor. They have a weapon in their hand. They don't have a book in their hand. The conqueror rather than the martyr. Same thing. Regarding faithfulness and honor rather than caritas and humbleness as the highest virtues. Honor, I'm honor bound. I love honor. Honor is just something that you can't really get rid of that if you have that in you. Like, you can't try to be a dark triad, dark doofy if you have honor. It's just, you can't. It's just, you either are dark doofy or you're not dark doofy. Regarding cowardice and dishonor rather than sin as the worst possible evil. Okay. This is a great passage because it really illustrates how I see pagan ethics as different from early Christian ethics and modern Christian ethics, but reached its pinnacle within the knightly orders. Ignoring or hardly putting into practice the evangelical precepts of not opposing evil and not retaliating against offenses, but rather methodically punishing unfairness and evil. So, kind of like a paladin. A paladin or cleric seeks out the darkness rather than uses lawfare to enforce it in the population. 5. Excluding from its ranks those who follow the Christian precept, thou shalt not kill to the letter. And 6. Refusing to love one's enemy and instead fighting him and being antagonistic only after defeating him. Okay, I'm going to say at the end there, thou shalt not kill, obviously, like that has always been known within Christianity as murder, not necessarily legal warfare. Okay, so I think even Avola maybe kind of glanced over that one a bit. And Avola, obviously, I think he did mature on his views of Christianity as well as he got older. He was really hard against it and heathen imperialism, but then he obviously, and that's kind of what happens to, I think, everybody eventually, is that you realize these questions are way deeper and it's way more than just a false dichotomy between Christianity versus paganism, and that there's way more avenues to discuss. That's why my channel rarely even touches on these topics, because I see the chaos comp as something way beyond even this. And I just, for myself, I just don't see Christianity as optimal for me, for myself, and that's just how it is. And again, I don't I hope I was fair. I hope I wasn't demeaning. I hope I wasn't dishonorable. I hope I gave a good case for myself. And it really just came to a boiling point because every day I would get a message or a comment, I mean, saying that you know, I should be Christian, or I'm a sinner, or I'm worshiping demons, which is true. There were church fathers who said that Odin and Thor were demonic. And so I understand that in your ontology, that's the case. But do I think Christians are worshiping a demon? I don't think so. I've met Christians. I've met them. I've met honorable Christians before. I think a lot of people take it way too far. I think there's a lot more. The cult of Ishtar for me is really the number one uh, thing for me, that is, which is a pagan cult. Let's be fair, and I don't think all paganism is equal either. And I really tried to lay that out. Not all Christianity is equal. Not all paganism is evil. There's a hierarchy, and it's not just a 1-to-1 ratio between the two. And for those of you who understand that, thank you for being able to see how I see. If you disagree, that's fine too. I and that's another thing. This proselytization, I don't need to convert the world to my worldview. I think it's very much an inner path that everybody has to find their own way, and everybody has kind of a different energetic input, and they're going to be drawn to different paths. So I don't think, no matter how well you make your case for this religion or that religion, I think some people are fundamentally just going to be drawn due to their casts to different types of belief, and that is just innate within people. And so I think instead of squabbling about, and sure, people are going, and debate is fine. It's fine to debate. I just think the debate needs to be in better faith and in better spirits too, because we're talking about faith here. People are growing up in these cultures, inundated with it, surrounded by it. And if you want to have these discussions, it's a lot better to have flies. You know, you attract flies a lot easier with honey rather than vinegar. Okay, guys? I know that's not what is going to probably happen. It's going to be more of the same. But that's just how I am. You know, I'm a Hyperborean Tulka, I'm a Hyperborean Bodhisattva. I'm just here to reduce the suffering of all beings. So, thank you guys for listening for that diatribe. It was a long time coming. Thank you for watching. Strength and honor. Gratitude.